Welcome to Her Story by Her Bible. And this podcast is exploring the intersection of womanhood and the Bible. And so I'm excited to introduce you to my new friend, Brandy. Brandy came here from Charleston and drove down to Orlando, and we get to see each other face to face, which is really fun.
Yes.
So if you're watching the video, we're excited about that. But welcome, Brandy.
Thank y'all so much for having me, Jenny. I am so honored to be here. I'm actually humbled to be here with you and to be sitting at this table and having this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So this is Brandy Dawson, and she's a seminary student.
Yes,
she's a wife and mother and grandmother. Let's see, what else? Tell us what else.
So I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm a podcaster. I'm a content creator. I'm a writer and a speaker. A teacher, a little bit of all the things of a woman in ministry in the year of our Lord 2025. It seems that we have our hand in so many pots.
Yeah. Well, it's so fun to meet you, Brandy, and just hear more of your heart. And I'd love to hear just a little bit of your story and how you came to Christ and how the Lord's been weaving that and into where you are today.
So I grew up in a very small town. We didn't even have a red light. And I lived in that town until I was 43 years old. So yes, I am a Charlestonian now, but I am a Tennessee girl through and through. I grew up in the foothills of Tennessee, and I don't have your typical traditional woman in ministry story. My mother was 15 years old when she got pregnant with me, and she was a star student at school. And so it was a very big upset to her mother, to her community when she got pregnant with me. And my mother quit school as a freshman in high school when she got pregnant with me. And we grew up very rural, and I would say now in our modern day, I can definitely say in poverty. So things were not easy. And when I was 7 years old, I'll never forget, my mother went back to school when I was 7 years old, and she worked every single day. And actually, she worked 2 jobs. She worked every day, and then at night she would go to school.
Wow.
And so she got her associates. Actually, first she had to get a GED. Then she got her associates. She got her bachelor's. And the year I graduated high school, she graduated with her master's. And so now my mom is a president of a Japanese-owned company. And so I have been raised by some very strong women. And my dad was there. My dad was in the picture. But I have been raised by some very strong women. When I was 13, my parents got a divorce. And I did not grow up in a Christian home. And not that my parents didn't believe, but we were not your traditional Christian home. My parents didn't pray together. We didn't pray together. We didn't have a Bible in our home. And I would spend the night with my friends on a Saturday night. So whatever church or denomination that they attended on Sunday morning, that's where I went. And I truly became known as our local church mutt. And that was fine with me. That was a term that I wear like a necklace as a badge of honor. It's a term of endearment for me. And when I was 13, I was at a centrifuge in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and came to know the Lord with my friends. My parents weren't there, but it was my friends' parents, and it was so beautiful to me. And, you know, to take that back, I knew when I was a child and I was growing up an only child, I was very lonely. The Lord, I went to the altar. I rode the church bus to church this one Sunday and by myself, and I was supposed to be in children's church, and I snuck into big church. The preacher there, it was traditional Baptist church. And he was a white-haired preacher, and he had his handkerchief, and his face would get really red when he preached. And he would kind of, maybe if you sat too close to him, you might have got wet a little bit. But I was so just drawn. I was just so enthralled with everything he said. And it was like a magnet drew me to the altar at 5 years old. And I knew that I was marked. And so even though I didn't grow up in a traditional home, a Christian home, my mom read to me, or she said to me every single night. I knew now I lay me down to sleep like the back of my hand. So I knew the love of the Lord, and it's so amazing to me now to look back because I knew there was his presence. I just didn't know at that time who and what it was, but there was this love that I knew that I don't know that I had ever experienced. And my parents got a divorce, and my mom and I lived together, and we raised one another because she was in school and I was in school. And so when I was 19 years old, I decided that I was grown enough that I needed to get married, because my husband and I wanted to move out. We wanted to live together, and his parents said, absolutely not. Not unless you're married. So we got married, and thank God it'll be 27 years in December. So
Praise the Lord.
It worked out, right? But we struggled. I mean, we were kids too. And so there was this pattern in my family that we were continuing on. And then I got pregnant within maybe 9 months after he and I got married. And my daughters, both of them, not just one of my daughters, but both of them became teenage moms. So now I own a medical practice. We live in a small community. We have what looks like the typical American dream, right? We have a nice home. We have the nice car. We have this family. We attend church. I'm teaching at church. I'm a nurse practitioner. I have this practice. And then all of a sudden, both of my teenage girls come up pregnant.
Wow.
One of them, now you would think, because I'm a nurse practitioner, so you would think that I would have known the signs were there. But one of them was really tired, and the other one was having joint pain and was gaining weight. So I take both of them, Jenny, to their pediatrician. She was a very, very spicy Latina, and I loved her with everything in me, trusted her with my babies and more than anything. And I'm telling her what's wrong with them. And I'm thinking she's going to do blood work. I'm, diagnosing maybe low iron, maybe thyroid. She comes in there to me in the room and looks at my one daughter that's there because she's got, gaining weight, and she's crying about gaining weight. And I'll never forget Dr. Levine looking at her and saying, gaining weight is not your problem, Cora. You have a positive pregnancy test. I don't know if I thought my blood sugar dropped. I don't know if I thought that I passed out. I don't know what happened in that moment. But here I am at a pediatrician's office with a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old thinking that they're sick. And the doctor comes in to tell me that my babies are both having babies.
Wow.
That was the longest car ride home. And I say all of that as part of my story, and I told so much of my mom's story, and that because my grandmother was a teenage mom. My mother, and then it skipped me, but then my daughters. And most families are passing down like generational heirlooms. And there was something looming over us that we were passing down that could have been like the breaking point. But instead, the Lord drew us so close together, and He used that moment of what wasn't, what we expected. It definitely wasn't as a mother what I expected for my daughters, or to have to face, or to have to go home and tell their dad. But that was such a big part of my story, because now it was like those grandbabies, and everybody, if you can imagine living in a really small town, everybody had something to say, right? And now looking back on that, it was like I could see where the Lord was woven into every aspect of even what wasn't what we expected and what we had hoped for. And I owned that medical practice, as I said, and about a year into my daughter's pregnancy, I found myself out of work. And I went to work for an insurance company. Now, mind you, at this point, Jenny, I had been a speaker for a pharmaceutical company. And so in the medical community, I had a place, and I knew my place, and I knew my role. I had been to Capitol Hill. I had sat on an advisory board as an expert. I had traveled around speaking and teaching. I taught nursing school, and all of a sudden I find myself out of work. I probably applied literally for about 115 jobs and couldn't find one. I never even could get an interview. It was either they would look at my application and I was either overqualified, or I had owned my own practice, so it looked like I hadn't worked. And so during that time, I read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation 5 times within a 2-year span. and really began to know the Lord like I had never known him before. And I look back on that now, and I see in that wilderness place when I could have gone crazy, right? And when everybody probably expected that I would, I found this radical peace in this chaos, in this chaotic place. I found this radical peace, and the Lord walked me through the wilderness, and I continued to abide in him and just listen and trust him. And I got a job as a nurse practitioner traveling around the state of Tennessee. So for 6 months, I would work in East Tennessee. For 6 months, I would work in West Tennessee. I was walking into a patient's house, and I fell.
Oh.
And I have an injury. This is 6.5 years now in the making. So I had a literal fall. Life, I thought, had been turned upside down once before. Now everything I knew shattered. Everything in that instant was gone. I was taken out of work. Little did I know then, almost 7 years ago, that I still wouldn't be working 7 years today.
Wow.
And I remember sitting there, and I asked the Lord, I said, God, I don't understand, because I had fallen, and the way I felt was on outstretched hands. And so I have an injury to my neck and right arm, and then to my hip. I truly I've walked through a Jacob season. When I tell you that I have truly wrestled with the Lord and walked out, maybe not with a healing, but with a blessing, and know that this limp is that I need him more than I could have ever known. I can tell you now that I needed him more than I could have ever known. But during that time, I said, Lord, I don't understand. I used my hands to work, and you've broke my hands. I don't understand. And I'll never forget the Lord saying to me, I broke your hands to war with the sword of the Spirit. And that's when I went. Wow. That's when I went deep in reading the Word and began to study like I had never studied before. I didn't know what else to do. My job wouldn't let me work. The doctors wouldn't let me work. I'm at home. And if you would have asked anybody during that time, one trait that I can say I took from my mom, and I don't mean this in a negative way, is that I was a better worker. Maybe than I was a wife and mother. That was my identity. That's all I had ever known. And now I'm home. And I'm being faced with things that I had never dealt with before. And during that time, the Lord said, have I not called you to be a teacher? And I was like, maybe you're talking to somebody over here, because I don't think you're talking to me, because I don't really have the patience for that. I teach nursing school. And he said, but now you'll teach my word. And, okay, you're talking to somebody that this was not what I had planned. And during that time, I wrestled with going to seminary school. That was 2017 when I really wrestled with that. So now, here we are in 2025. I'm in my third semester of seminary. I have a podcast that the Lord called me to a voice to in 2017, and I wrestled with him until 2025, and to write a book. And I wrestled with him from 2017 to 2025. So when I tell you I've had this Jacob season, but I have seen his hand in every aspect of it, and he has provided for us so beautifully in ways that I never would have known that he would provided. And even in that wilderness place, he showed me that he truly is Jehovah Jireh. And it has been one of the wildest rides that I can tell you. I never would have expected for the Lord to call me from a medical ministry. And I felt like that was a healing ministry that he'd called me to. But now it's more as you'll still have a ministry, and you'll still have a healing ministry, but it'll be with the words that I've written on your heart, and you'll speak them with your mouth, not necessarily through medications. And so in a long about way that you asked me about my story, that's just kind of the long and short of how we got from a little girl that knew nothing to now so deeply knowing. That's definitely where my truth and my trust and my faith is rooted in. I had nothing left but him. Nothing that I had known, everything that I had ever thought I'd known, and the way life looked and the way I had planned was completely different now. And I began grieving the life that I thought that I was supposed to have. And that's the funny thing about grief, is you never know when it's going to come up. And when you grieve, like the loss of a person, that's one thing. But when you grieve the loss of life of what you thought it would be like. It's something you can't step out of sometimes. And so the biggest thing that I have learned is that joy and grief can coexist, and they dance together, and they have a place together, and we can still walk through hard things, and we can still trust Him. So
Wow.
That's a little bit of my story.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for sharing, Brandy. I love hearing how you experienced God's faithfulness and you clung to Him during these very difficult times and circumstances. Yeah, and of course, I'm curious, did your daughters cling to the Lord? You said that brought you all closer.
You know, I hate to say it this way, but I don't know any other way to say it that just feels like the truth. But my daughters weren't necessarily on the best path at that moment. And it's almost like the Lord used the birth of my daughters. They both had girls, and this is the wild thing, Judy. Not only were they pregnant at the same time, but they gave birth an hour and 48 minutes apart.
Wow.
In the same hospital with the same doctor. And so we're going in between room 218 and room 219. And I'm just like, Lord, I can't miss this. I have to be in this room. I have to be in this room. And it's almost like He used that. And that's what He used to draw them closer to Him. And I know that may not sound like your typical way that God draws someone into them, but it was a saving grace for them. Those girls truly saved them. And so not only did it draw us closer together as a family, but it drew them closer to Him. And that was one of the most beautiful things that I have probably ever witnessed. Now getting to see my babies raise babies, but also raise them dependent upon the Lord. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I'm glad I asked that question. Yeah. How do you want to encourage women? So we've been talking about women and what are women facing today, and how do you want to encourage women to trust God?
More than anything, just to truly live by example and to live the gospel. And to not just teach and speak the gospel, but to live by His light, to be His light, to be His love, to be hope, and more than anything, to be a safe landing space. And to know that in times when I come to face with some women, sometimes they need an encouraging word. Sometimes they need a prayer. Sometimes they need love. We always need prayer, but sometimes they just need a listening ear. And so my biggest thing right now, and that I'm using practically in my life as an application right now, is to discern when they need me to just be a safe landing space, and to show them that no matter what they walk through, that even when our circumstances are hard and even when our situations are not what we would have expected or what we would have chosen, that doesn't determine our worth and who we are and our value to God. And it doesn't mean that He's not good even when our situations aren't good. And so just to be a hope for them to bloom where they're planted and to embrace the right now and not to continue to worry about the future and what's going to happen, but to take it day by day and just to trust that He is here, He is near, and He is Elroy. He sees you. He sees the sleepless nights. He hears your cry, and He hears the prayer in our breath. So.
Wow, thank you. I love that.
Yeah.
So with her Bible, of course, we're encouraging people to listen to the Scripture in women's voices. And I'd love it if you would share who encourages you from the Scriptures.
Oh, goodness. So there are so many. And if I have to say women, I love Esther. Esther encourages me as a voice for others, as a voice of compassion, in a place of love and justice, because I believe she truly loved justice and sought for it and fought for it for her people. And I love her. She encourages me so much. And another female that encourages me, all of them really do, but I think of Ruth and I think of Hannah. And one of my favorite things about Ruth is that, she gleaned in the field. And one of the things that I love to take away from that is that the gleaning in a field, what is that? I mean, she got the leftovers, right? So she got to pick the leftovers. And it just reminds me that the leftovers will be the blessed overs. Sometimes just because you may not think that God sees you, and you think he sees everyone else, and you think you may be the last one or the least of these or someone he would never choose, that you have been faithful in that even with gleaning the leftovers, that blessing will come, and it's not just for you, it's a generational blessing. And so those are just two examples of women that encourage me.
Yeah, and she didn't know what the future was. All she did was, trust God every day.
Yeah.
And the Lord provided for her.
Yeah.
And she had a baby boy, and she didn't know who he would become.
Yeah.
And who his sons and grandsons would be. Yeah. So, thank you for sharing
And
that.
I love, one thing about her Bible, and one thing I love about having an app as to where the scriptures are read to us. I love being able to know and to hear other women read scripture, that it breaks borders, and it goes beyond boundary lines, and that it is multi-generational, and that it is multicultural, and that we all have a place at the table. That women truly have a place at the table. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, Brandy, so much for sharing. Yeah. I love hearing your heart and what God has done in your life and in your family's life, and how he's redeemed your story and all that. I look forward to what he has in store for you. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And I pray that her Bible listeners and your listeners would be encouraged today as they step into their calling. Thank you. This is Her Story with Her Bible. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to Brandy Dawson's book in the future.
Yes.
We'll let you know when it comes out.
Yeah.